Well, hello everybody. I am Brian Mullins the Fox. Welcome to the first direct response video to such intentional or unintentional disinformation, I can't tell which, that I have ever seen in the past, much less today. Believe me. But this time, unlike my normal routine of just going through one video and make a response to that, I'll do two response videos in one. So, there's a channel out there named History of a Dish that made two videos over 3 years ago back in 2019. Let's check out the first one. Let's skip the intro and the annoying TTS bot introducing the video before the introduction of the actual video.
G'day gastromites and welcome to History of a Dish, a place where we go searching high and low for the origin stories behind some of the most popular dishes from around the world today.
You would be right if it's not just doing surface-level research and citing Wikipedia as the main source of information more times than not, but you're not. I'm not trying to discourage people from citing Wikipedia as a source of information, but it's a meme. And this video will be the biggest demonstration of that meme. Before I continue on with the video, I'm going to be mainly focused on America and Canada, so other countries that don't concern these two are irrelevant by default. By the way, if you want to watch a much better video on what I'm responding to now, check out Be Amazed's video called What Christmas Dinner Around the World Looks Like. The link to that video will definitely be in the description box down below, even though Be Amazed's video just mentions beef, turkey, and eggnog or whatever. That's just a generalization. That's not intentionally spreading misinformation or disinformation. It may just be wrong. But let's get into the United States first, then Canada.
United States.
If you're expecting a roast turkey at a US Christmas dinner, you might be disappointed. With Thanksgiving happening in November, a lot of people have had enough of poultry by the time Christmas arrives and opt for a glazed ham or roast beef as a centerpiece instead. Scalloped potatoes and a Waldorf salad are added, with pumpkin pie and Christmas pudding for dessert. A well-rounded meal, as they say.
What? People also eat turkey as the centerpiece for Christmas dinner during the post-roast game era, you moron. Just because most people had enough of poultry from Thanksgiving doesn't mean that other people are. Sure, it may be less than ham, but the stats are still clearly there. This is why I don't make surface-level and poorly researched videos like this, because if you did just so much more than a cursory Google search and just gazing at a Wikipedia page, why would you think that the 22 million turkeys number even exists if they just abandon that centerpiece meat choice? Even though, as I have pointed out repeatedly, that 22 million number is completely false. Some people who can't and just choose to not think for themselves blindly take numbers like the 22 million number as absolute fact, and they just eat it up like retards. Hook, line, and sinker. And people like me who do think about what they put out as a video when it comes to research are just flat out ignored. Because nobody that's lazy enough tends to just watch all the way through anybody's deeply researched commentary content. They rather have bright colors, faith-based woo, and Wikipedia as their main source. This is coming from me, though I have cited a Wikipedia article or two, but not so much to the point where it's the main source for my arguments or blind statements about Christmas dinner. On to the roast beef part. Now, who in the hell would opt for a roast beef for Christmas as tradition? I don't even think that's a traditional centerpiece meat as of now. It used to be until 1960, sure, but that's because that centerpiece meat choice fell out of favor due to popularity, not because it was based on historical precedents or any absurd biblical reference. Ham wasn't originally associated with Christmas, by the way. Turkey wasn't either. They both only became the duopoly of centerpiece meats for Christmas we all know them to be today because they completely dominated roast lamb, roast beef, roast chicken, and took all the three other meat choices out of the competition by 1960, which is the last year of the 1950s. And people should know as of now that 1960 was the year that both ham and turkey became vastly more popular. I've pointed out the glaring flaws of this video in a comment I made around 9 months ago. I have a lot of criticisms for this one. For starters, what sources do you have for the descriptions for each country? Is it just Wikipedia pages and other articles you nonchalantly didn't cite? If you want to cite your sources, go right ahead. If you don't have sources to cite for each one, that makes your video look bad. 2. I'm not saying you're plagiarizing anything, but make sure you have your sources ready. 3. Using a text-to-speech bot lessens the value or quality of your video, on top of how the video is either poorly researched or badly made in general. Here's the main issue. A. Americans don't eat Christmas pudding and don't usually pick roast beef as their centerpiece at all. B. Are you sure that in the post-roast game era, the main meat choices are either ham or turkey and not both? Because they are. C. If you're gonna generalize Christmas dinner traditions all around the world, don't forget the statistics and data. I recommend Statista. Find a way to look at the data free without facing the paywall. And finally, D. Make sure you know where a certain statistic belongs to country-wise and not just have it stolen from another country as their own and not tell anybody. If content like this does not improve, it does not deserve the views it gets in my opinion. But that was 9 months ago. I'm making this response video now.
UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand.
Here, Christmas is all about having a roast. In the UK, the most traditional is roast turkey, though other poultry is popular too. The main dishes is served with a bunch of sides: stuffing, gravy, root vegetables, mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. Because of the warm temperatures, people in Australia and New Zealand often serve the meats cold, have a barbecue instead, or opt for seafood.
By the way, before I move on to the next video to debunk, you can't just haphazardly lump Canada in with the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. They don't really have the same traditions as you're putting it. You should have made Canada a segment of its own. Not that he said anything of value about Canada to begin with. Now, let's move on to the second video, this time talking about where your Christmas dinner tradition comes from, instead of what they look like all over the world in the first one.
Turkey and cranberry sauce.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You just contradicted yourself in your other video. You said before people got tired of poultry, in this example turkey, but now you're going to explain the history of the centerpiece as if it was part of it at some time back then? Fuck off. Okay, go ahead. I'll wait and see how you try and explain this.
United States.
You probably already knew this one, but turkeys are native to North America and they were first brought back to this country from New England after the Pilgrims had established themselves there in the 17th century. Eating turkey on Christmas Day is actually a much more recent tradition where they started to replace the goose in the 19th century.
It's not just because they wanted to replace the goose. It's also because before they did, turkey was a luxury item. Goose was a luxury item as a centerpiece meat choice as well. It was really expensive for common Americans and their families back then to buy it. It's just that goose wasn't as desirable as it used to be as the centerpiece of Christmas dinner prior to 1900. At that point, before 1900, Christmas dinner wasn't even really commonplace, as it is in the post-roast game era and the pre-roast game era. The Victorians of England introduced the template or their version of Christmas dinner before it became commonplace as of 1900. Those centerpiece meats were relegated only to the rich, and turkey, just like ham, wasn't commonplace until the Christmas of 1900. Ham wasn't even associated with Christmas until 1900, the last Christmas of the 19th century, which began the pre-roast game era until 1997. Then, the roast game era began on November 17th, 1998, and ended on the Christmas of 2016, where they ate their own children's ass meat as a replacement to turkey and ham as the centerpiece of Christmas dinner after having slaughtered them for not believing in Christmas. I'm fully aware that when I said to the summer of 2017, I was being loose with the timeline and a little vague, but the point still stands. Where did these traditions come from, you might ask? Well, most of these modern Christmas dinner traditions claim or somewhat tangentially associate them with some dubious connection to history. Dubious at best, fabricated at worst. We're not going to be proverbially driving down the same avenue that my 10-hour-long Christmas video essay went down. The very idea of traditional Christmas dinner came along around the same time as Thanksgiving dinner in America, but even Thanksgiving dinner has a long history even at that time. But again, these traditions, or so they call it, were local or regional, not national at that time. Pretty much all of these 19th century Christmas dinners, unlike Thanksgiving dinners, were mostly, or if not all of which, were for the upper class or the rich. But for the common middle class or lower, they were either just shit out of luck or just went with normal dinner instead. It was absolutely rare that some of them would go hungry. As I quote an Insider article, the 19th century was when the modern Thanksgiving dinner meal began to take shape, thanks to the republishing of pamphlets and historical records from the pilgrims of the first Thanksgiving celebration, and Hale's tireless advocacy. Hale also frequently published Thanksgiving recipes in her magazine, Godey's Lady Book. Before America was even founded as a nation, the Victorians of England were the inspiration for many in 19th century America. Originally, the turkey was reserved for only the upper-class citizens or even just the richest of rich people. And no, we're not talking about stuff that happens in books like Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol, or even characters like the Scrooge. Though that would make just a lick of sense because it isn't fair for you to be the only one to fully acknowledge just how selfish the upper class truly turned out to be. But it's also rare to see children and people starve. The same presumably went for the earliest Christmas dinner era in 19th century America, because the way competition began rolling out in the general population of both America and England were characteristically the same. Before I move on, I just need to strap you all in and prepare yourselves, because what he is about to say is beyond factually inaccurate.
Why did they change that? Having a goose on the Christmas table would have been pretty cool. Anyway, cranberries are also native to New England and were probably first consumed with turkeys by Native Americans.
Now that is either a Thanksgiving fact or that's a fucking lie about Christmas dinner history. Didn't you mean that they were first consumed together on Thanksgiving in 1621? Where in the fuck did you get that from? It was first introduced for Christmas by Native Americans. Where's the source for that? How come I can't find a source for that shit? I'll show you how this is a particular fucking lie thoroughly to you people, as if you can't do that yourselves. Or better yet, didn't you mean Thanksgiving instead of Christmas? Because if so, I can understand. But if you meant the latter, well, I'm sorry, but that is a piss-poor excuse to contradict yourself between two of your videos. I'm sure that Thanksgiving inspired turkey being the centerpiece of Christmas dinner during the pre-roast game era, 1900 to 1997, like I said before earlier in this video, but that's because people got it from pamphlets and recipes from Godey's Lady Book. And this is Thanksgiving inspired, by the way. Cranberries, let alone cranberry sauce, and turkeys were first introduced together on the first Thanksgiving in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is New England territory, by the way, in 1621. Some other meat choices like geese were first introduced on Thanksgiving too. The Native Americans were seeing themselves being slaughtered and taken out en masse throughout the 1800s, which is long before 1900. Have you ever thought about that for longer than 2 seconds? I wonder. So it's not that turkeys and cranberries were introduced by Native Americans for Christmas dinner, it's that they were introduced as a part of Thanksgiving dinner on the first Thanksgiving dinner in 1621 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Either get that shit straight or stop lying about traditional Christmas dinner history for both America and Canada. I just don't know what would convince anybody that those two videos I just debunked were at all good. Well, they're not. When your two videos are so fucking idiotic and poorly researched, you're either a moron or an oblivious dupe. And that's fucking it. I finished through all of this. I finished debunking and got through all of this. Thank you all for watching this response video. Tune in next time where I go into an even more surface level video about Christmas dinner history and debunk that. But until then, I'm Brian Mullins the Fox signing out. See you then.